The Flyin Lion says,
boys, hell is real.
2023 Supporter Shield champs.
Just give me a reason to drink some Guinness in the morning.
Yeah, just a fan of the sport, you know.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's definitely tougher to be an academy player than it is a pro.
Soccer's my favorite sport now.
The jersey swap was
my car of the week.
Trivia question of the week.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Flyin Lion podcast. Our guest for today's episode has the inside scoop on FC Cincinnati. He's got a very unique perspective, a knack for storytelling. We are excited to welcome to the Flyin Lion podcast staff writer for FC Cincinnati, Carter Chapley. Carter, thanks for joining us tonight, man.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so glad that I can be back with people who know that it's a Flyin Lion and not a griffin like they showed on the Jumbotron at Citi Field this weekend. So it's truly good to be back home after this weekend.
I didn't realize that they did. Did they actually?
Oh yeah. It's always something.
Always something. And I mean, playing in a different field every time we go there, practically too.
Basically, one place you're at a Red Bull, one place you're at your Yankee Stadium. I mean, who knows?
Who knows when you go to New York? But we just wanted to ask you where you're from originally.
Yeah, I grew up in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, so it's a different kind of path to this whole thing. I believe kind of funny enough, the first MLS kit I owned was I forget the name of it, but it was a long sleeve Nick Hagglund number 4, which is just like I've told him that story before, and it's a very funny, like, just kind of circle of life, because like at the time I didn't fully understand like the draft or any of that, and so it was just like the first year I was getting into it, I was like, I'm taking the draft pick, like I'll take the guy I believe in, and so I had a Nick Hagglund number 4, which was really cool. And then so I grew up in Toronto, and then I've kind of bounced around the United States since coming down here from college. So it's been a bit of an adventure to end up here.
Like destiny, right? I mean, the fact that he ends up with FC and then you end up with FC, like, it's almost full circle.
It's kind of it's crazy. Like, I remember at the time when he got in 2019, when I had like kind of like I had gone to cover college basketball at the time, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. So I hadn't been watching MLS as much, just because it's very difficult to keep up in the way you need to with every sport all the time. I still find it very challenging. And being like, oh, I got traded, I hate that. Cincinnati. Like, okay, I get it. Like, I like that. Like, that makes sense to me. Like, you know, if you're going to go somewhere, go home. Like, that makes sense. It wasn't like at the time Sebastian Giovinco leaving, and I was like, no, you don't want to have that. But I remember Nick, it was like, oh, back to Cincinnati. And then when I moved to Cincinnati, and I was like, he's got to still be here, right? And sure enough, he was like one of the first guys you see when you walk in the door at the Mercy Health Training Centers, Nick Hagglund. So
what do you learn already, Carter, from being here, you know, over a year now? Cincinnati people don't generally leave Cincinnati, or they find their way back.
They come back.
In a lot of cases. In a lot of cases.
They find their way back, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, what's, I guess, interesting with Toronto FC too, didn't he win a championship there as well?
He did. Lost the Seattle Sounders one year and then beat the Seattle Sounders the next. I vividly remember watching those, because at the time Toronto didn't quite treat those as the same kind of championships that the 2019 Raptors ended up kind of taking claim to. But that was like the first real title the city had since 1993, when Joe Carter, who I'm named after, funny enough, won it for the Blue Jays. So it was that was a very beloved team at the time.
Was your sports, I guess, origin growing up, was it more baseball? Was it more soccer?
Yeah. I played soccer as a young, got like really young, and then, you know, you can only play one summer sport really as you get older, and so baseball is the one I went to. Was a diehard Blue Jays fan my whole life, still is. Joey Votto is my guy. Still love him. So that was a very nice little connection there. I really wanted Joey Votto to play one game for the Blue Jays just so that he could have Toronto on his Hall of Fame plaque. But it feels, you know, right in hindsight. But yeah, baseball was where I grew up most. Moved to the United States to play college baseball in Iowa. That didn't go quite the way I wanted it to in the long run, so I had to find a career. As many,
don't we all?
as most do. And I didn't start in sports media until I had met my wife in grad school, and I took her on a date. We were in St. Louis, which I moved to after Iowa, for grad school, and I took her to a Cardinals Brewers game for our first kind of date, and she was like, "You really don't know how to shut up about this stuff. Like, you know, everyone's college, you know, where everyone went to school." I was like, yeah, I kind of do. She's like, "Have you thought about like doing this for your job?" And I was like, you know, I had not. And so I had done like writing and like communication and journalism, but never in the sports world like that. I had done news when I was a student journalist, and so that kind of pushed me in the direction of like, this sounds a lot more fun for you. I was like, yeah, it's worked out so far.
That's how you knew
Yeah,
you met your wife then, I would imagine, like
It
right in
was
that moment.
yeah.
Yes, it felt very much like, and she has, I think, regretted it ever since. So, especially for like weekends where it's like, where are you going? Monterrey, Mexico. Where are you going now? Like, yeah, she's been
Well, there's
along for
this
the ride.
competition that they're a part of this year and then possibly next year, but possibly not next year. Like it's always funny explaining to people. But yeah, no, I
Yes.
totally get it. My dad actually is from St. Louis and went to St. Louis. I have an aunt in the St. Louis Hall of Fame. So yeah, I was going to ask you, and for those listening, I mean, you have to tell us what's your take on what is a Billiken.
Oh, a Billiken. I am a true Billiken. Um, I believe in the Billikens. Uh, a Billiken is the enigmatic model of things as they should be. Kind of like this isn't it's a St. Louis University is a Catholic school, so using the patron saint of things as they should be isn't maybe the correct um, theology. But no, it's a little elf looking figure that got very popular pre World War II. That was just like kind of like. But the way it was explained to me initially, and I kind of like this, was it was like Beanie Babies. You'd trade them; they were like a thing for a good luck charm. And then World War II happened, and immediately they just kind of lost all public, like Beanie Babies, like they just kind of disappeared. Um, but right before World War II, the head football coach, which then got eliminated with the war at SLU, um, kind of looked like one according to sources. So they became Billy's Billikens, and the name stuck at the university. And so it had a modern update in recent times. Um, it didn't always look so slick as the logo does now.
Sure.
But it's St. Louis University basketball, especially, which is the big sport there, is so back now with Josh Schertz, the new head coach there, who looks like a Billiken. So it works out in our favor. The vibes are coming back. So no, I tried to convince someone to put a Billiken up in the Bailey on one of the flags, just to poke at the Dayton Flyers a little bit. All the locals I have to get used to being friends with.
That's my team, Carter. That's where I
Yeah,
am,
no,
so.
it's like
But hey, that's okay. That's all right.
You know about the Arch Baron Cup. You know
Oh,
how you,
that was going to be my question to you,
Yes.
man. It's a big deal.
Oh yeah, I have to explain just how big of a rivalry it is to people. It's
Where's
crazy.
it? Where's it at this year?
Well, they go both ways.
They'll play
Okay, the
home
both
and
ways.
home. Yeah.
course.
The Atlantic 10 Conference, the mighty Atlantic 10 Conference would
That's right.
never
That's right.
take
Well,
that away
so
from one of the schools.
for our audience, I mean, they probably didn't know they were going to get caught into the Arch Baron Cup discussion here.
My audience did. If they're listening for me specifically, they knew this was coming.
They know all about
Oh,
it.
man,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
absolutely love it, man. I love it. Well, I guess talk us through then how you got involved with FC Cincinnati.
Yeah, so after I went to school in St. Louis, I stuck around for a little bit, moved to Milwaukee with my wife for a little bit, and kind of moved back and forth between St. Louis and Milwaukee. And I got started in sports writing in a serious, like real journalism way. I got hired in St. Louis at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch to cover the Cardinals, and I did that for just over 2 seasons. Just over 2 seasons. And did that for the paper along with a whole bunch of other stuff in the off season because that's just the newspaper business these days. You got to kind of be able to do a whole lot of stuff. And an opportunity came up. I was made aware of it that FC Cincinnati was looking to do some different stuff with their web presence. Kind of at the beginning of the 2023 season, kind of going into that, but it didn't quite trickle down all the way until like hiring until I don't know. Probably midway through March, April, when I heard about it, and said I was interested because at the time I was the number 6 writer on the Cardinals beat, which is a lot of fun. You learn a lot. I worked with Hall of Fame baseball writers, future Hall of Fame baseball writers. I got my BBWAA card, so I'm still a member of the oldest sports writing organization in the country.
That's awesome.
Which was a huge kind of like a. Why'd they let me do this? Like who
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah,
make
you're
any
like, oh,
sense.
okay.
That's a huge mistake on your part, but okay. I'll take it. Don't run with it now. It still sits behind me here. And it just kind of it felt like an opportunity to dive into a sport that's growing in this country, a sport that I really like and care about, and in a city that made a lot of sense for my wife and I. Um, and then with an organization that had clearly shown an investment in content, right? They had hired in a time in newspapers are always retracting. A lot of very good friends of mine have lost their opportunities there and had to move on to new and modern things. Um, this felt like an opportunity to continue to do really good work on an editorial side with a club that really cares about it. And so I was a little hesitant at the time, but I took the leap. There's always this big thing about moving from like a newspaper, like a real journalism, big J, to working internally at a club. Um, but I think in the time since it's been a really good adjustment, and I've had conversations, and people want, like, the club wants me to treat it with a journalistic view. They want me to try and present things as true to form as possible, and so I'm able to kind of take that and run with it. And sometimes I'm pushing the boundaries. Sometimes not everyone has been always happy with everything I've written on FCCincinnati.com.
It's hard to make this fan base happy, man. With
no,
everything.
I'm talking about internally.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
no,
right.
like the fans too, but it's a difficult spot to be in, right?
Sure.
Like you're kind of a foot in both worlds. And that's okay. And I think that's what's made us so successful thus far, but I'm working with really creative and amazing people, from our videographers and photographers and our social media people. I oftentimes tell people that I'm not a member of the communications staff, so like I'm not beholden to that kind of thing. But it's a lot of fun. It's a really great opportunity. I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, obviously before you came along for FC Cincinnati, I feel like, that pulse on the team that, was kind of the liaison between the fans and, the I guess the club were those beat writers, right? Like Pat
Yeah.
Brennan, like Laurel, like
Mhm.
those people. And now you're bringing a voice for the club, to the fans straight away. So how is that kind of you being able to kind of figure out FC Cincinnati's voice, if you will? Like, how is that process, starting out?
Um, it's been really fun because FC Cincinnati's voice has been in many, there's two different voices. There's the at FC Cincinnati Twitter account or Instagram account, or like the club statements and things
Yeah.
like that. Um, and that's one voice that's really important. And then there's my voice, which tries to add a little more color, a little more storytelling. I try and be a conduit for what our players, coaches, um, staff are feeling and are thinking, and try and um, take in all their information and then try and analyze it and package it in a way that is either honest or true, but that accurately depicts how things are going. Like one, I tell this as an example when I've spoken to like a college class or something about this, is like about the difficulties of this, is like I had a really hard time knowing what to do when the team wasn't playing well.
Sure.
Like when I was at the newspaper, it's like you can just say the team wasn't playing well, and it took me a really long time here to figure out what to do when the team isn't playing well, and it took after I think we were in Orlando this year, and if you remember that game correctly, we went up 1-0 really quick,
Mm-hmm.
and then Orlando took a red card, and then it kind of fell apart. Like we just didn't play well up a man, and that's kind of been a story for a little while now, not playing up a man. And I asked in the press conference a question, and I didn't like how I asked it. I didn't feel like I had asked a good question, and Pat Noonan kind of saw it on my face that I wasn't happy with the way I asked the question. And after the press conference turns off, he kind of pulls me aside and goes like, "Hey, like, ask the hard question. Like, ask the question.
Wow.
Don't be worried about this. Like, you're here to do this specific job. Ask the hard question. So if we suck tonight, go write that we sucked tonight, and tell that, because if we sucked and you thought we sucked, go write it, because this is the information presented to you. But if you don't know the answer, then don't try and like wiggle your way into some like positive spin."
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like here we go. And it kind of just kind of let it rip from there. And so it's that's not a situation that every club writer has.
No,
Right.
no,
Like not
yeah,
every
yeah.
like I can't like I've heard stories from around the league. That's not a situation every club writer has. But we have an organization that lets you do that. And so I have written at times this year, especially we're going through losing streaks, and what I'm trying to do to create the voice is that, like, if I write we just lose you have a 3-game losing streak, whatever it is, right? The team doesn't look great. And I'm writing it's because they're not, organized or connected, or they're trying to work through some problems. It's because that's what they're saying. That's what they feel.
Right.
Not because it's like, oh, like it's worse than just saying like we suck. It's like if they were just like bad, it'd be like, well, right, that it's just bad. But if it's confusion, if it's not understanding, if they feel like they're just inches away, they give me the freedom to write about that kind of stuff. So that's
Uh,
the hardest part, is finding that like voice of being like, this is the truth, but I know no one is
Yeah.
going to necessarily believe it,
sure.
like because I'm writing it.
Well, and how not to like take your heart into it as well, because I mean, you
Yeah.
become so attached, and the people that you work with are responsible, for these decisions and everything too. So, no, props to you, man. I felt like you've done an
Thank
unbelievable
you.
job, especially this year, the second half of the season. I mean, I feel like,
Oh yeah,
especially in
just
our space, like ups and downs and
Yeah.
the movement in and out, and how to navigate that. And I mean, honestly, in Pat Noonan's era, like this has been the first time that we've kind of navigated these waters in a
Hmm.
way. So for you to figure that out too, massive props. And as
Thank you.
Sam had mentioned, in a transformation, second half especially, what's a maybe favorite storyline that you have? I know appreciate you sharing the one, down in Florida. Was
Yeah.
there any other one that stuck out to you so far with this team specifically?
There's a few I haven't written yet that I'm kind of holding on to that I'm
Okay.
going to save as a tease.
yeah, we'll
Um,
wait for those.
yeah, there's a few. There's at least one that I'm really thinking about and how I'm going to tell it right. But I think the one that's kind of hard not to talk about with this team this year is the 42 lineups and 42 games thing to kind of end the season.
Hmm.
Um, Going across all competitions, and that's the thing we were
Mhm.
tracking all year long, kind of dating back to the first CONCACAF sessions, because it was like, oh, the game in Jamaica is going to have one lineup, and then Matt Miazga is going to come back from suspension, and then and then we kind of noticed it and tracked it. We knew we were going to have a lot of rotation and options, and so how many lineups can we actually play? And the thing that kind of bothered me about, and it had to make me reevaluate how I told the story, was that it kind of felt like, and I don't know if this is a meme, I don't know if like the way that the fans are taking it this way is like the honest way, or if it's like everyone's acknowledging it and then kind of like finding the joke, which like I am also prone to doing. Is that like it's as if Pat was doing it to like hit a record or something, and like I don't think that's true. I don't think that's the way they operate. Like I think they're very like, Pat is like singularly focused on winning soccer games to such a degree that like they don't consider like
What everyone else is like
what's
looking
yeah,
at.
Yeah.
right, like what's the record, like they would never even like
Yeah.
if you presented them into a and they'll recognize it, like, but they'll recognize it as like, yeah, we've had a lot of change this year, we have to go through a lot of stuff this year, but they're never going for a record. Like they are individually focused on let's win the next game. And Pat Noonan has said this year, like, I maybe could have done differently and give guys opportunities to kind of just have stability, right? Like, oh,
Mhm.
we're not going to move Yuya back from striker to play wing back because he's the striker, and if we need a wing back, we're not going to move him. Like, we're just going to find a different guy to do that. He's acknowledged that, but I think the way this team operates is we're trying to win every game we're playing in, no matter the circumstances. 3 games in a week, whatever it is, we're going to win every game we play in. That like the 42 games thing is kind of like, wow, that's hard luck. And not like,
Yeah.
look at us go. We're doing this
Right.
great, cool thing.
Right.
Like, so that's probably the storyline that I'm thinking most of this year, is to like, okay, so now we go into the playoffs. They finally found this kind of lineup that works, and no one could have predicted what it was, right? Like, you should have seen my
Yes.
face when I get the lineup like before the game in Philly, and it's got Luca Orellano at striker, and I'm like, oh, what are you talking
All
about?
right.
Like, okay, like sure, like whatever.
You're like, that's
Um,
42, right? That's gotta
Right,
be.
it is. Well, because it couldn't possibly be any. And
Yeah.
then Teenage
Yeah.
Hidebe comes in, and he's looked great. And it's just like, I think it's been more a matter of like trying to piece together a season than it has been like, let's show how flexible we are.
Sure.
And that's the thing that I'm trying most to think about this, like as we kind of bring the season to a close, to be like, they don't want to do this again. I think if they had the option, they would have like 42 games, maybe like 10 lineups if they had everything possible,
Right.
right? Like that's
Right.
12 lineups. That'd be fun. But like this 42 and 42 or whatever it is now is like, let's not keep doing that. Let's not
Yeah,
do
I
that
know.
next
Like
year.
off of that storyline, I know Ryan and I have been talking about it, for the past couple weeks. I know Manager of the Year award will be announced,
Hmm.
coming
Hmm.
soon, but we were talking about like the fact that Pat has been able to do that, right? With all these different lineups, and you
Right.
still get your team to third place. Like we were like, obviously we're a little biased, but at the same point, like, how do you not give him at least, some more shouts than what was out there? Because what was out there was it was between Tata Martino and Wilfred Nance, and that was it. Like no discussion.
Right.
And so we were kind of like, well, what about Pat? Like nobody's ever done this before, I feel like.
No, and and like it's funny because like we look at it at the end of the season and we see it as like, wow, he made it to 42, and like maybe that's the reason the team kind of fell off towards the end of the year. But they were also doing that when they were in
Yeah.
first place,
Yeah.
and like it
Right.
didn't stop. The story
Right.
exists across all segments of the season, and so Pat was getting, up until I think the watershed moment probably isn't Matt Miazga's injury, though it might have been in the long term. It's probably
Mhm.
Lucho getting hurt
Mm.
towards the middle of the
Yeah.
season and like that
That nagging
Leagues Cup
injury.
break.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even stuff you kind of see today, like to this day, like it's still not quite 100%, but it's closer to like 95. And so it's like whatever. Um, but like they made it all the way through that with a different lineup as well. Like the stat lasts and he gets to top of the table after the Miami win. And it's like,
Right.
well, and maybe the answer is it fell apart because there was too much change, and that's just how it happens. And I don't think there's like a bad candidate for Coach of the Year this year. I think
No, yeah.
Tata has merits. I think Wilfred Nance has merits. We talked a lot in you mentioned Pat Brennan and Laurel Pfahler, people I spend a lot of time with now. Pat and Laurel amongst the rest of the media corps particularly. But like there are a lot like Dean Smith in Charlotte probably deserves deserves props.
Right.
There's like oh God, why Greg Vanny in
LA, yeah.
for the
LA,
Galaxy, Steve
yeah.
Trundolo, like
Right.
there's lots of guys who deserve a shout. And maybe maybe if you take the poll now that Columbus Crew have been eliminated from the playoffs, that maybe you don't vote for Wilfred as much. But like I would have had no problem voting for Wilfred after the season they'd had, and
Yeah.
lots of candidates. But it's kind of a shame that Pat didn't get more attention,
Yeah.
even if he
Yeah.
wasn't the winner. Like even if it
Yeah,
didn't come
I
down
think
to
that's
him.
that's what we're
Yeah.
all saying there.
Just
It's
some
just
love, like some
more
shout,
flowers.
or
Yeah.
just to, I mean, if you look at other sports too, I mean, how many times are you going to have different lineups,
Oh,
for that many games?
never,
I mean, you're never.
never.
And
No other sport will
so
have this.
I think like to your point of telling the story, like moving forward, like you can go back and say, remember when they had 42 different lineups and 42 different games and they still were
Still
able
did
to
well.
consistently, play. I mean, that's a model that I think we've been wanting for, all the years prior to him. So I mean, I can't
Right.
complain with that, and it's just been so impressive. And honestly, given us things to talk about too, which has been great. But talking about the MLS, I know you mentioned a little bit with Toronto. MLS obviously rapidly growing and kind of drew your
Yeah.
interest. What do you think FC Cincinnati in the next 5 years brings to that landscape for American soccer? And then I kind of want to hear your opinion on the Canadian side if we have a minute to hear it, because I
Yeah.
know you probably follow some of that too.
Yeah, I do. I am a particular sicko for the Canadian Premier League. Just because like I find it very like I think this is a total non sequitur to what you were just talking about. But for the Canadian side of it, it's like I often think of like in England, let's say, where there's, we all know what the four levels of the pyramid, but like the same goes for France and Spain and Germany and Western Europe, if we want to call that kind of generally Belgium. You kind of like there's like a whole system of leagues that like if a player, let's say in the MLS Super Draft, goes in the first round, and then makes a full career. Let's say they did that in Europe, and it's like the Premier League draft, and they go in the first round, and they make maybe they're late first or second, and they don't make their career in their first couple of years in Man City, but they go play really well at lower division teams. No one would think that's a bad player,
Right.
right? And so, like, I think the more competitive levels of soccer in North America will grow the game in the way that we see it is in other places. Like England's small, so there's a different fan culture. It's the most popular game overseas, so it's a different fan culture. If you had like, I oftentimes think of college basketball or college football, and you have people going to like me going to SLU games, and it's the Atlantic 10, and like I care about it.
That's right.
So
Exactly.
so like I can and like they exist in the lower levels of the pyramid, and sometimes they stand out and sometimes they don't, but their transfers go up and down, right? Like it's a whole different industry. And so I think having the Canadian Premier League be effective would be the same thing as like England seeing the French league grow. It's like there's better soccer everywhere, so there's going to be more competitive players, and it just so happens that there's 3 Canadian teams, which is I don't personally have a problem with it. I know there's a lot of soccer fans who think like it should be like border restricted, which I'm like,
Right.
I don't like. Toronto is like, I grew up there. Every sports team I cheered for has played almost exclusively against American opponents, except for maybe the
It's
Maple
true.
Leafs. Like everyone else is like almost exclusively American, so like I don't really mind. MLS and FC Cincinnati in the next 5 years is incredibly difficult to predict because we're at such a watershed moment for the league
Hmm.
in that there's reports of a change of schedule after the World Cup
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
and
Yeah.
expansion is continuing and um
Pro rel.
pro, who knows, right? Like, and there's to be clear, I don't know. To be clear, I don't know. But there's that. There's also like the Messi effect is, I think, very annoying for someone who isn't like a diehard Miami or
Hmm.
like cares about Messi in like a very specific way, but it undeniably is changing the economics of the league. It's changing the way it's perceived overseas, right? Like I don't think Marco Royce comes and plays for Galaxy or Hugo like or
True.
Olivier Giroud. Like I don't think these guys at this time do these things. Maybe, we've talked about it as a retirement league, and Messi has very clearly showed that he's not a retirement league player down there, but like you look around, it's like it's changed the way it's viewed. So like you could really take advantage of the next 5 years and like grow the league in such a way financially that's
Right.
hard to predict where it's at.
Well, and how do you grow off the World Cup too?
What do you
In
do?
this
Right?
moment.
How do you build from that? Right.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think the two are like intricately connected. I do think that it's like it's MLS's, whatever you want to call it, fiduciary responsibility to try and take everything they can from it, right? Like I think that you can like say the American World Cup, North Canada, Mexico, USA World Cup goes incredibly poorly, and that MLS could still come out strong, right? Like I don't necessarily think they're
Yep.
intricately connected, but that's just one non-economic economist's person's opinion. I think with FC Cincinnati, though, the things I do think I know are if Chris Albright remains at the helm, the team will be suited to pivot to whatever is coming,
Hmm.
right? Like I think he has shown an ability to um, work within fine margins and find the places to um, that are important to grow the team and create a competitive atmosphere. I think the same thing goes for Pat Noonan, though it's like Chris hires Pat, who hires like So if Chris is at the helm, let's say like we joke often like if Pat Noonan got hired away to coach for Arsenal next year, whoever's next because Chris picked them, I'd believe it. Right? Like
Yeah.
it's right. Like so,
Absolutely.
and if the same thing goes for like if Dom Kinnear as an assistant coach got hired away to do something else, whoever the next assistant is, I'd believe in because Pat chose them. They've given us a sample to believe in.
Right.
So and the same thing goes when you go higher up the organization, which is kind of like you go next to the senior leadership team, which Chris Albright is a part of. You go to ownership, which Carl Linder III has proven to have been willing to invest in not only this
Right.
team but this city
Mhm.
in a way that like I don't think people from outside Cincinnati quite get.
No, yeah,
Um,
I mean, his fingerprints are
right,
everywhere in
exactly,
Everywhere.
Cincinnati sports. Like, you
right,
just look at
Yeah.
like the history of all the professional teams. Like,
Right.
he's got a hand in all of
right.
it.
And so like if you're like you could be an MLS sicko and not quite realize if you're like from Philadelphia, let's say, or like that's about maybe a bad example, but like because our connection with Philly, but like from like Chicago, right, like New York,
Yeah.
and you could be like, oh wow, they really seem to got things figured out. This Carl guy seems like a great soccer owner, and they'd be right, but they wouldn't quite get the full picture of like why the organization is like even when the team wasn't winning was still in the community, was still doing
Mhm.
things to grow the game of soccer in Cincinnati.
Hmm.
So I think whatever the changes are in the next 5 years, you look at who are the people in charge and you go, whatever happens, whatever changes, they will be ready to pivot. And that puts you in a better position than I would say, like in 70% of the league. Like I think there are a
Yeah.
lot of good teams out there, and we're starting to see them, and the cream is starting to rise, right? Like like I have no question. Like I know this is a hard thing. It's like tastes like vinegar coming out of my mouth, but like the same thing goes for Columbus Crew, right?
Hmm.
The same thing goes for like you know LAFC, right?
Right.
Like Seattle Sounders, like
Oh
whatever
yeah, yeah,
comes
yeah.
next. These are teams that have shown they can, and I think FC Cincinnati, if they weren't part of that conversation before, they are now.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
and the
mean, yeah, go ahead,
transformation has
Ryan.
been, I was just going to say the transformation has just been incredible then. obviously you've come in, but from afar, I'm sure you've seen and heard,
Hmm.
obviously, from all of us too, about like where we were and where we are now, and then how do we take that next leap? But like you said, I mean, I have full faith, in the group that we have in that foundation, in the willingness to say, we see your passion and we're gonna, almost equal it,
Yeah,
in a way. So I appreciate that.
yeah.
So
They're fans. They're
Right.
fans. Like the people here are fans, which is huge.
Yep.
within so that 5 year span, right? That next 5 years, Carter, your opinion here, does NWSL fit into that?
Um, I I think if it went the way I think like it's a hard question to answer because like does it fit into that? Like, sure, it does. Like, yeah, like
Yeah.
of course it would be great. Like it would be great. I don't think it not happening changes the conversation around FC
Hmm.
Cincinnati specifically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if it does happen, it was like, listen, I would love nothing more personally, just as
Hmm.
like a guy who would like a sports sicko in general would like love to see more women's professional sports in this country. Like
Right.
just more because there's a space for
Mhm.
it. Like I think we see that with the growth of the WNBA, the PWHL and professional hockey,
Hmm.
uh, women's college sports growing
Yeah.
tremendously.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who like his not my first. This is a better story, but like my second professional story. The second thing I ever got paid to write was a recruiting class update about St. Louis women's soccer.
Oh,
So
wow.
like I appreciate like I've seen it up close and personal, and it feels like there's space, right? Like SLU women's soccer, again, little tap on the shoulder here, was like for a long time one of the highest attended
Yeah.
women's sporting events in the country,
Yeah.
right? In soccer. We're not talking about college basketball like it's women's soccer, which is great. And so like I thought for a very long time before St. Louis City SC landed in St. Louis, which
Hmm.
they asked for that. I thought that for sure was going to have a women's team there first, just because it felt like it was going to work.
Right.
And so I think it will work here. I hope it works here. I hope it comes here. I don't
Mhm.
know anything about like I personally am not like at a high enough
Sure. Sure.
part of the organization to be
Didn't
granted the
trickle down
privilege
quite
of
yet.
knowing
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
It's like I found out about the visit that was reported when I was down at Blink and I saw t-shirts walking around and I was like, that seems really interesting. Like maybe I should grab one of those. But so I think it would work. And I hope it works. I hope it comes. I just don't
Yeah.
like I don't think the two are related. Like I in the same
This,
way that
yeah. Yeah.
like the you could bring a mind like it's like you could bring a women's hockey team and that would be more impactful to have the Cyclones do things than if
Sure.
like the two would coexist, I think, beautifully. And but FCC will continue to do its thing.
Yeah.
I think they parallel so well in the growth of both too, and
Yeah,
seeing what the MLS, seeing what NWSL or even women's sports in general, but to have the vision to even say this is a possibility in the future for us, even when we were, building TQL or the training facility, to say this is a possibility, to even like kind of foresee that in the
yeah,
facilities and everything. I mean, that's just impressive to me too.
yep,
And again, speaks to ambition, more than anything.
yeah. And like that's kind of like you see that when you go around the league to different stadiums. And I haven't been to every single one in the league yet, but like TQL Stadium is really special, and
Hmm.
it's built to be a hub of sports in ways that like I really like. There are some stadiums it's well built to host soccer, but it's definitely not TQL Stadium, right? Like you go down to NFL stadiums and they're definitely not soccer stadiums. So it's like TQL Stadium there was a lot of vision when that place was built, and it's before I got here, so I can easily say that. But like you can see like there was some thought, and I think that's
Yeah.
part of that seeing like kind of like the ready to pivot for whatever comes next.
Right. I guess you touched on it a little bit with Monterey. Was that the best stadium that you've been to for an
Um,
atmosphere wise this year?
no, no, the Jamaican National Park was so much more fun.
Really? That's
Oh my
awesome.
gosh, it was elite. It was like it wasn't as big, it wasn't as full, um, but there was like a real heart, a real passion in that stadium. Um, Monterey was big and loud
Yeah.
for sure. Like don't it's a beautiful, gorgeous um, building that I understand why the World Cup's going to be there for sure. But in the same token, like on that trip when we went down for the CONCACAF Champions Cup in Monterey, we went to go see the night before because we flew in a couple nights early. I think was it night before or 2 days before? It might have been 2 days before because we flew down a couple days early.
Okay.
We went to go see Orlando City play Tigres in the
Oh wow.
Champions Cup games. Just some staff members, like like not the whole team, but like we, like our comms director got in touch with Orlando's comms director and they got us some tickets, and like that place was unbelievable. Like the El Volcan was unreal. It was just a totally. It was like one was like the stadium of the people of Monterey, and one was the stadium of the corporations of
Wow.
Monterey, and like and BBVA where Rayados play is like a like I don't even know how to describe it, like a modern marvel. Like it looks
Yeah.
like you're like you could be in Mexico, you could be in Germany. It's just an unbelievable stadium. Tigres was like you're at like a college football environment and the people are going crazy and like yeah, like that it's just there's been a lot of really cool places this year. Um I'm trying to think of like what if I went to a new MLS stadium this year that well, I guess that like that I like not like a newly built, but like one that I hadn't been to before. Um, and like I think FC Dallas is really cool with what they've
Hmm.
got. It's a very different environment with the National Soccer Hall of Fame right there. It's much smaller, but it feels a lot different. And I
While
think that
while you
kind
were
of
there, was it undergoing renovations while you were there?
not yet,
Not yet.
not
Okay.
yet. But they had just told us when we were there that they're about to announce this
Yeah.
big thing, and we were like, oh, that's exciting, and it like definitely needs it. But like that's kind of the newest one we went to this year. San Jose, another one really cool right by the airport. Um, uh, another cool stadium at the very least, very different. Um, and then like I'm always impressed by Philly. Like Philly's always a fun stadium environment road trip. Uh, we just won there, and my joke is always like, and this has been told to me by many others, so I'm not the first person to go with this thought that the best win in Philly is a 2-1 win because you win and you get to hear dupe. Um, like
That's
so
amazing.
don't tell Roman I said 2-1. He'd probably want to hear 2-0. Um, but yeah, like there's a lot of really cool environments, and it's kind of cool to see the league is at different stages, and that's kind of a fun part of like what the league has right now.
Yeah. Well, and kind of to tie into that, obviously playing at City Field, I'd seen your tweet about the field dimensions, and I appreciate that because I
Yeah,
think everyone was all, thinking the same thing. FC Cincinnati has a history of playing in baseball stadiums. Carter, on our podcast, we like to do our trivia question of the week.
sure.
I'm going to ask you, do you know FC Cincinnati's record in baseball stadiums or ones that have been actively used for baseball at the
For
time?
baseball. Um, we won't count the preseason loss to Austin this year in
Ryan, are you
Yeah,
counting
Tampa Bay.
USL as well? Right.
We'll just do
USL, I was
MLS.
thinking-
We'll just do MLS.
because I say I don't know I know Louisville played there
All
for a
these
little
minor
while.
league baseball stadiums.
Right,
There's a
right.
lot.
Yeah, I know Louisville played on one. I think Richmond is another one that probably played on in a baseball.
See, I thought, but no.
No, it's
Nashville
okay.
and Penn,
Oh, yeah.
Harrisburg City was at the
Okay.
time. Yeah.
On baseball fields. I'm sure I saw it at some point this week because our amazing stat guy in the department, Patrick, probably put
Patrick,
it
Oh,
together.
we love Patrick.
Man,
Yeah.
Patrick, but the man, he is my quant, my favorite guy.
We've like shouted him out like on
Oh,
tweets,
yeah.
and he's DM'd us and been like, "Hey guys, here's the answer to your question." I can't really like tweet it to you guys, but
Yes.
here's the answer.
He is the man. I don't know. This is like because like Yankee Stadium, there was a tie last year. I'm trying to put like together the
So
math.
4 games, four games total in MLS we've played in baseball
On baseball
stadiums.
fields.
Yep.
Oh, interesting. It's that few. Okay, I know that like we had so four. Okay, so now I can start including this weekend.
Including this past weekend.
Okay,
Yep.
so it would be like on baseball stadiums in New York. It would be like 1, 1, and 2.
You are so close. I mean, if you consider, so tell me what you consider. I go 1, 2, and 1. So 2 losses, 1 tie. Is that what you're thinking?
Two
One-
losses. Yes. Yeah. Two
Yep.
two losses because like there's the two. It's the two. Well, there's what was the two because the one win was in 2022
Mhm.
at
Yep.
City Field.
Well, 23, I think, wasn't it?
23.
That we won. 23.
There,
Yeah.
there was. I know there was a PK win as well. I believe.
Was
No,
there?
no, 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 no. There wasn't. That was against Red Bull. Yeah, okay. So one win, one draw, and two losses on baseball fields in
On
MLS.
baseball fields in
Wow.
MLS. Yep. We had only played at City Field once before. That was the second.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember
but
watching that game.
otherwise, Yankee Stadium was obviously the other one.
Yeah,
USL though, for everyone in the total of it, 3, 4, and 6 all time between USL and MLS in
three,
baseball stadium.
3, 4, and 6. Jeez, Louise.
So yeah, tell
13
Pat Noonan.
games.
I'm sure they're all like, look, I'm sick of having to play. I mean, did you guys see Coronel? I think for New York Red Bulls came out today
Yes, yeah.
and was saying, hey, I'd prefer to play Cincinnati just so I don't have to play on a
Playing a
baseball
baseball
field.
field. Yeah,
So
because they'll probably end up. They'll probably. I mean, like now with the World Series over, I'd bet they play at Yankee Stadium. If
mm,
NYCFC was to keep going, like they'll go back to their preferred
Yeah.
location, which is, I
yeah,
guess, I can't imagine why those dimensions are preferred. But yeah, I also would rather play soccer on a soccer pitch. That's a personal, like, in the same way that I'd rather play
yep.
baseball. Like
It's
I
just
wouldn't want to play baseball on a
interesting.
hockey rink.
Yeah, it's a
Like,
different advantage for the home team,
yeah,
but I mean, it's obviously the same for both. But the way you prepare or play consistently on that field,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like that has to have a difference. So,
I made the reference to someone after the game, and they felt like this might have been a fair comparison. That like watching this game on Saturday was like, when you watch, it's like every summer or every 4 years when all the NBA stars have to go overseas to play in like FIBA
it's true.
international tournaments,
Yeah,
and it's like the painting on the floor is all weird,
New
and the size
ball.
is, it's a new ball, and
Yeah.
like they like the Team USA or Team Canada or like whoever's got mostly NBA players has like a scare against someone they really shouldn't have a scare against. And then they go on to win the gold anyways because like they figure it out because they're pro athletes. Like they're the best in the world at this.
right.
It kind of felt like that was this game on Saturday in Game 2 against NYCFC, where it was like the first half was like Team USA basketball cutting it close against
Yeah.
South Sudan, which no disrespect to South Sudan, they played really well this summer, but like LeBron James shouldn't be losing to South Sudan. And then in the second half, they like figured it out. It just they didn't have enough time to
Right.
to go the whole distance, and then um, if the PK doesn't happen if you feel like you have more time, and so it was kind of like I feel very confident coming back to a real soccer field. What's going to happen?
Yeah, no, same. I think that's what we came out of it too. And it's like, all right, well, we see what this is at. And then you see Miami's result too, and you're like, okay, I mean, we're both in the
Right?
same
Yeah.
the same situation. Obviously a football stadium for them and baseball for us, which is interesting. Um,
Turf in Atlanta. Yeah, same kind of
Yeah.
deal.
yeah, yeah. I guess last couple questions here. We won't
Sure.
keep you too long. For coming to Cincinnati, Chili's obviously, kind of this love language here. Are you a
Yes.
three-way or a Coney kind of guy?
So this is where I need actual help in understanding because like um I think the answer is Coney because I don't love the chili on pasta, but that's because I don't love like the spaghetti pasta.
Mhm.
Okay.
Like that's like a difference of opinion. But on a hot dog, all in. Like totally all in. I didn't think I would be. I'm totally like I now, and I'm gonna give a shout out to some of my wife's friends who she has made um she's like at like supporter group events, which is now
Cool.
I'll let you know. If you're at a supporter group event, there's a very good chance Mrs. Chapley's walking around amongst you. So like, be careful. She doesn't go by Mrs. Chapley, but she'll let you.
I
You know,
love it.
she's out there.
Yeah.
That she's made some of these friends, and so like because I'm working and they are not, I'm typically the one driving people home after the games if we can wait long enough.
Yes.
And most nights there's a skyline um, right outside our neighborhood, and most nights it's a drive through the skyline on the way home, and I will always go, especially after a win. A
Oh,
cheese coney will always do it for me. No onions, but everything else is good.
So
I
just
feel that.
order the Carter Chapley is what you're saying.
That's
We'll
the
go
way
to
I'll
that
go.
one.
One
All right, cool.
one cheese coney.
One cheese coney. Plain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I guess a final question for you. What advice would you give to someone who's interested in sports writing today? Maybe especially for those that want to cover a sport like, soccer in the US that's
Yeah. So
evolving.
a sport like soccer in the US is so different than every other sport. Um, One, because it's still growing. There is not an established hierarchy of coverage like the NFL, like NBA, MLB, NHL, other college sports like that. Um, So finding a team, so like you can write about your team really passionately. I would say there's also a reason why I don't cover the Toronto Blue Jays, and I don't think I'll ever cover the Toronto Blue Jays, because I love them too much, and it's very hard to be like objective and try and take the like. And I love FC Cincinnati in a way that's different from the Blue Jays, in that like I'm new here, but I'm very much I have my ring sitting somewhere in like upstairs. But like so I but it's like it's a very different feeling for me for the Blue Jays. It's just longer. One day I think FCC will get to that point, but that's one day, right? Like, though, so the advice about getting into sports writing is one, work, continue to work. And I know this is not a thing that like is a popular thing to say, especially in the year of our Lord 2024. You are going to work if you want to work in this industry a lot for not a lot of money, most of the time unpaid, like I did for years. I bartended. Like I would do days where I opened the bar at 10 a.m. and I would bartend all day and then go write a Billikens basketball story on a game night and be up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning writing for $45, which is just like not a career, right? Like there were times where I was writing stuff for SB Nation where I wasn't getting paid, but I just knew I needed my resume to keep getting bolstered. That's not, I don't know if that's right, but like painter, like if you wanted to be a professional painter, you have to paint things, you have to practice.
Right.
If you wanted to be a professional singer, you have to sing, you have to, for painters or graphic artists, there's maybe a little bit more of an industry of like freelancing, and you can sports freelance, but it's really hard to find those connections. You have to work really hard, and they're not going to take your work unless you have a body of work to show them. So I would say like there is a media market in FC Cincinnati land still that isn't being covered, right? That's nothing to do with like Pat or Laurel or myself or you guys or the Post or whatever the other outlets are out there. It's just not. It's too small. Like the league isn't big enough yet, right? There isn't those kinds of things.
Right.
And so there's a spot for you, but just know you have to put in a lot of reps. You have to show your work oftentimes. And you're not going to get paid, which sucks. It sucks. I wish if I had a genie in a lamp that I could like bring back the era of sports writing where like it was like a real full-time job for like a full press box in a baseball stadium, right? It's just not the same anymore. But the thing is that now in MLS specifically, maybe less so in other places, but in MLS specifically, if you can show a body of really good work and show that you're professional, that you're doing this for the right reasons, and that you're trying to do good work, you can get a press credential. Like you can get opportunities that maybe aren't out there to talk to Joe Burrow, right? Like you can get opportunities to talk to people who you otherwise wouldn't, and that's a thing in sports that is very hard to come by. So show your work, do a lot of it, right? Like as I said, like. When I got laid off for the first time during the pandemic in 2020, I was in New York City covering the Atlantic 10 tournament and was just kind of hanging out in New York. And I got a call that it was like, we can't pay you anymore. And I was like, okay, kind of get it. Understood. And then my bartending job called me and also laid me off, which that was more devastating for my rent situation.
How did SLU do that year? We have to hear that too.
In 2020?
Well, that was the year. Was it already played through?
The canceled year. That was the year we got through
the A10.
They canceled the tournament before SLU had started.
That's right. That's right.
That was the year that Dayton claims they would have won a national championship.
Yeah, we didn't hang a banner like UCF did for football, but
or VCU for everything.
That's true.
Again, my audience. That's a very specific audience. So I would say like, if you want to get into sports writing, write, do it. Like start a blog. Like keep writing and write a lot because like I still like every time I take 10 days off, I go to a wedding, I come back and it's rusty, right? Like the actual like sitting down and writing a gamer is rusty, and so like
I feel that
you got to go write, and it sucks in our industry specifically as a writer that like it doesn't have the same kind of payout that I'm not saying graphic artists have it like way better than we do, right? It is kind of like I always use the like painter's paint analogy.
Sure.
And then like someone will be like, oh, well, you can go to a coffee shop and sell your paintings. And it's like, yeah, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not quite the same what we're talking about here. So yeah, if you want to get into sports writing, go write, and then have a wife who's willing to tell you that you should go do this for a living, and then support you through it the whole way, or a husband. It doesn't really matter. But
I love it, man. I
go
love
write.
the words of advice, especially in the ever evolving space, like you said, especially in MLS and opportunities. You mentioned the rings. Was that something you guys knew about, or did you just find, was that a surprise?
Um, we've known about it for a little while,
Cool.
but when we got when we got told, it was a surprise. So like
Awesome.
we got fitted earlier in the summer,
Okay.
got our ring sizes, and that part of it being informed was a surprise. Um, to some, not obviously not to everybody.
Yeah.
Um, I think there may have been conversations prior to me arriving that like a Shield, a MLS Cup, an Open Cup, like anything would
Yeah.
be. I didn't personally know that that was going to be. So when we were told, I was very excited. So
That's a nice touch for everyone
it
too to
is.
receive.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
it's-
yeah. I mean, I've my only claim that I've pretty much got as far as like FC Cincinnati stuff is I've got the silver scissors
The
that they
scissors.
gave out for the ribbon
Do you have the
cutting
shovel?
ceremony. Yeah, I mean, we have a shovel as well.
We do.
There you go.
We do.
There you go. I don't have that. So those.
I might have an extra one if you want it.
Yeah,
I still,
exactly.
I still have my goggles somewhere. That's the other second thing. I saved the
Oh, that's
goggles
cool.
from the
That's
from
cool.
the locker room in Toronto, which is
Nice.
funny because like the players had these really nice goggles that they had obviously the equipment staff had obviously put together. Me and my team had like Amazon purchased like science goggles that like at some point we were just like these are not worth it and put them on the top of our heads and like whatever.
Yeah.
But it was there and it has champagne.
It does. It
Stained
did.
on it.
It-
So
yes. So it's all that matters.
Real. It's real.
Yes.
Carter, we appreciate you joining tonight, man. Where can our listeners follow you? Specifically, like everyone listening to this podcast knows Carter, let's be honest. But if
Thank
you
you.
wouldn't mind shouting out your socials for everyone,
Yep.
we appreciate your work.
Yep, I'm at Carter Chapley on Twitter. Super easy. It's my name. At Carter Chapley on Instagram. Though I don't really. Every once in a while, you get like a little cool something on Instagram that's like, oh, Carter is like the team is here, and Carter took an Instagram photo on the team walk this place, which is always like way after the fact, but it's a cool tidbit. I'm not really active on Instagram, and then of course over at fccincinnati.com is where you find all my writing. I'm there just about every day writing something silly, something fun. We're trying to do more interesting stuff, more fun stuff. So I think especially starting next year that we kind of I have my feet underneath me with my first season, you're going to see a lot more soccer content, but also a lot more like fun, different kind of
Personality
approaches.
stuff.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
my favorite stories to tell are about the guys and how fun they are because I think people should know.
Mhm.
And I'm going to try and do a little bit more of that in the future. So
Awesome.
you can find that at fccincinnati.com.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for joining.
Thank you guys for having me. I'll do it anytime.
Hey, FC Cincinnati fans, we are pumped to share our new sponsor, Peak Cocktails.
I'm sipping on the passion fruit margarita, which is so spicy and it makes me feel like I'm on the beach.
Ooh, that sounds great. I'm drinking the Blood Orange Spritz, which has a great subtle ginger flavor coming from its scientifically formulated recipe to promote exercise recovery, enhance relaxation, and support a better night's sleep.
Ryan, that's exactly why I love them. Their cocktails are designed to fit seamlessly into your health conscious lifestyle, giving you the enjoyment of a delicious adult drink without the downsides of alcohol.
Guys, next time you are looking for that post-workout drink or an afternoon pick-me-up, grab a Peak Cocktail. Visit them at www.peakcocktails.com and use the code FLYINLION at checkout to get 20% off your first order. Zach, enjoy your drink. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for listening to an unbelievable interview we had with Carter Chapley. We want to thank him again for coming on the pod. That was just an awesome discussion. Sam, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, that was great. Obviously, a lot of insight because the man is the source, right? Obviously, he's got a lot of great experiences with the club, and he wants to build off of this year. And I look forward to the content he continues to put out, not only here in the playoffs, but also next season. It sounds like he's got some good things cooked up.
Yeah, again, we appreciate him coming on. Go listen to all of what he has to say, his interviews, I mean, all his articles. Really good insight there. It's hard to talk about this playoff game, Sam, going from that interview. And then, we have this 3-1 loss in the second game, which we'll cover and kind of get to a point where we can preview by the end of this later part of the episode, the game three, because it is a big deal. But for game two, being a 3-1 loss at NYCFC, we did roll out the same lineup again. Third straight game with this lineup, which, as we talk with Carter, was, kind of crazy that we did have that. But we did get Yedlin starting. We were worried about him with his injury, but he comes back in. And then playing on City Field, Sam. So, baseball field, like we mentioned with Carter as well, for an MLS team to play on two different baseball stadiums throughout the year, the pitch was tight. It changes the way you play. This game just kind of looked off from the start. And, the first goal that we concede, it doesn't come within like the first, immediate part of the game. We actually do have some chances to start, but
Yeah.
they get a goal and it kind of just deflates us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, another first half goal conceded, right? I know we've talked about the stat before, so I think it's like, let's just say 14 out of the last 19 or something like that, right? I'm sure it's different, but yeah, the through ball, to the corner that's kind of squared in front of the goal, like it was a lot of just communication issues there in the middle, and it just didn't look good for us.
Communication in the back, for me. I mean, we had it so well in the first game. You get a clean sheet, and then you get scored on, and they have their home crowd that they're building on, obviously, and then they get a second goal, and it's really hard in the playoffs, especially in that away setting to come back from that. I had mentioned, I think to you earlier on, but free kicks were going to be huge in this game with how narrow the field was. We were really trying to see. Were we going to have more physical play in the box for free kicks, for corners? But the second goal comes off that free kick, and Cheeto has a bad header. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He usually gets it right, but maybe it hits the side of his hair there, and it lands in the guy's lap, which is kind of a freak thing. But again, like it just seemed to be rolling their way, and they go up 2-0. Coming out of half, I was pretty curious to see, how we would change things. And honestly, what a good response in a lot of ways. We had
Yeah,
more of the possession, we
good
had
energy.
more of the chances, and we get a world-class goal, like you had mentioned in our breakdown, by Luca Orellano, which again, continuously, like the running thing now, Sam, the guy only scores bangers.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I mean the back heel from Santos too.
Yeah.
That was pretty nice. Throughout the game we had those little intervals of, passing just never resulted in, a chance or even a half chance. And for, Orishano to be able to turn on that left foot and just put it in the top left corner was beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, to cut it back too,
Hmm.
he's going to the right and cuts it back. I think it throws the defender off and then to place it like that. And you feel like you're back in it. You're down a goal, but you create more chances. I think Alvis Powell has one in front of goal that wish he would have, put in that moment, but you're getting those opportunities. I'm going to go to your stat because I think it's relevant, but we are second in the MLS Cup playoffs in XG at 5.79, only scored two goals. We're only behind Vancouver on that XG, but chances, so many chances you have to put away if you're going to win these MLS games.
Yeah, I mean, once again, just chances, right? That says it all when you look at the XG. I know, I think it was Hadebe. I don't know if it was Powell on that
Oh, was
chance in
it?
front of
Okay.
goal.
Okay.
Yes, but once again, like you had said, just like things like that need and should go our way when you're within not only the 18-yard box, but also, the
Mhm.
six, right? So it is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yep, and then you get a final third goal, which I think is kind of a fluke. Like you're going for it, and I
Just
I
trying to
don't really
stop him
know the
from
one-on-one.
scoring.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
one-on-one battle there. Like okay, the scoreline says 3-1, but it felt more like a one-goal game. And you come out of it and you say, okay, well, I mean I hated on the best of three series, but now I'm kind of like saying, okay, it looks better now that at least we have a home game for game three. So I had mentioned to you, I think while we were watching the card issue moving forward in the playoffs. So Yedlin Buka get a yellow in this game, Assad and Orishano last game. rule for the playoffs is three cumulative up until the conference finals. So we see Buka come off actually, which is kind of rare for, him this year. And I wonder if it was a card accumulation type thing. If we're saying, okay, if the next game he gets one, the following game, then it does wipe out actually, up until that conference final. But I don't really see that being as much of an issue. I know we had the card situation and suspensions last year, but it's health number one. And coming out of this game, I think we are healthy as far as we know, obviously. But hopefully motivated to say that left a bad taste in our mouth, and the way we played game one versus two, even in the second half, like we almost feel like we have better chances. Like coming back home, we have to play, behind our team. So my impressions, though, final impressions for it, we needed that energy from the start if we wanted to win on the road and kind of take the narrative to them. And if you go up early, like it changes the game. So Luca Orellano putting that one-on-one in makes New York kind of press even more and maybe leaves them more exposed. So getting that first goal was huge, and they got it, and that was the key difference.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, FC Cincinnati just got out hustled, right? And like you said, the pressure of the tight pitch really worked in NYCFC's favor, especially during that first half. We just couldn't get anything rolling, and we were looking for it, that hold up play,
Mhm.
from tall forwards like Kelsey in this tight pitch. That's what we were kind of calling for. But also we weren't really clearing balls. They weren't really like crisp, right? Even from a goalkeeper standpoint, we just need to be more efficient. And obviously, playing at a soccer specific stadium at home, hopefully we'll be able to get it done on Saturday.
I have faith. I think they'll come out
Yeah.
of it and they'll be inspired for it. We want to shout out Lucho for his 150th appearance for FC Cincinnati. It's a huge moment for him. Second player in club history to reach that milestone behind Yuya Kubo.
Kubo.
So awesome moment for Lucho, our captain. And excited to see what he can do in game three because we need him more than anyone to step up. I want to hear your card of the week, though, Sam.
Yeah, card of the week. As we're watching the game, obviously it's in City Field, right? Baseball stadium, so it's a little unique. And so my card of the week is going to be the fact that NYCFC had to put bleachers inside the bullpens to try and maximize the amount of fans that they could have in the stadium. Pretty embarrassing, not going to lie, for an MLS team when you're shoving fans into the bullpen of City Field. I guess though you have to try and make money somehow. I'm gonna guess that it was pretty uncomfortable to sit on bleachers, and even I'm gonna this is on the low end. They were probably paying at least $75 to $90 a ticket, at least. Probably more than
If
that
not
because
more.
they're on the field.
Right.
So just thought that was a bad look.
And what's the view from that behind,
Oh my
the,
gosh,
the
yeah.
wiring of the bullpen and everything? And the call to the bullpen should have been where the subs were. That would have been the most ideal baseball reference for
That would
I,
have
I
been
need
pretty
a
cool.
I need a righty or a lefty, coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
Maybe for PKs,
Put
we'll
some
take the
wood,
right.
put some, wood boards in the
Yeah,
bullpen there. They
that's
could ping
right.
it off of a little bit, get it warm.
It's true. It's pathetic. I mean, I know they're building their own stadium, but like it's absolutely ridiculous that we have this. And like if we want to be a serious league and we have, arguably the best soccer player of all time and he has to potentially go play and he did. He played in Yankee
He did.
Stadium. Like it's absolutely crazy. My card, Sam, was there's all this narrative out there even before the playoffs. Is the Columbus Crew the best team in MLS history? Well, Sam, you got to make it past the first round to do that. So a little bit of shade there. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack for it, but yeah, I mean, they're not creating the narrative, but all this talk about they're the best team, they're the best team. It's like, okay, they won Leagues Cup, but past that, like obviously they won last year. But if this year's team is what you're considering as the best team in history, they got to win something. And if all those people that want to talk about how MLS Cup is the biggest thing to win, they didn't even make it past the first round. So I don't know how you have that argument. If you want to say whatever you want about winning, LAFC is the same way. They've made all of these finals and have lost. They've got one championship, for that in that time period. So I don't want to hear it. I don't like the narrative. I think Taylor Twellman even had put it out there as well and said the same thing.
Yeah, I know. And LAFC has the potential, they're going to a game three as well. So, they have the potential to possibly, you know, get kicked out there and have the same narrative, as far as like, oh, thought they were the best team ever. Oh, nope. not anymore. So yeah, I obviously I agree with you 100% because why would I agree with the crew? But yeah, I think Taylor Twellman, like you said, I saw his tweet and he said the exact same thing. He was like, "Why are we calling them the best team of all time, or at least considering it?" Um, yeah,
It's
let's
based
wait
on
for a team
play. I mean,
to
like if
trouble
you want to
or
go with
something.
like a romantic style of play, like that's one way to word it. Oh, I just love watching them play. Like say that. Don't say they're the best
Yeah,
team. Like that's I don't know, my
big
2 cents
difference.
on that one.
Yeah.
Sam, I have a feeling I know what your jersey swap this week is.
Well, I beat you to it this week. But my jersey swap of the week is going to be Luca Orellano. The man continues to make an impact on every match he plays. He was actually one of three FC Cincinnati players with or to have a rating of 7 and above, and he's actually the only one to have an 8. So he was the only bright spot we had during this game. His goal had composure and, like you had said, gave FC Cincinnati that hope in the second half. All three of his shots were on target. He actually had the most duels won in the match with 11. I believe he went like 5 for 5 on take-ons as well. So playing him up top really gives us the best chance to win.
Yeah, the way it is now, I agree with that, and just continues to find a way to contribute in big moments, which is what you want to see if you want him to step into that next role of being like your elite player. And I think he's done that, and he's been able to show it in big moments, and with a lot of game winners this year too. I went with Obi for my jersey swap. I felt like he commanded a decent amount in the midfield there, like past Orishano, like not a ton of huge shouts for jersey swap, but Obi did his best. I felt like the goals, weren't necessarily on him. But yeah, I mean, it was honestly hard to find one past Orshano in this one. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
No, I believe Obi had like the second highest,
he did. He had the
rating as
second
well.
high
So
rating. Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
take that for what you want. Yeah.
yeah, and game after game, he's just come in and been a dominant force in the midfield. I
Hmm.
hope we can get him to now, hopefully at home, kind of trigger things like we had been talking with Carter. Is like his voice is important for the team. So that leadership role now in a big moment is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll do the trivia of the week here. Um, Ryan, in the last season's playoffs, how many teams or how many game threes were played in the MLS playoffs last year? And then of that number, how many games did the home team come out on
Mm.
top?
I feel like we put shade on this last year because we had again said the same thing of, game threes are dumb and all this, and like we won ours. And I'm only gonna say one game three happened last year. This year, I feel like there's been what, three or four at least, maybe five. The home team, I'm pretty sure, won every single one of those matchups, but this year you're getting a lot more balanced. And I hated to say it, but like again, like this situation kind of saves us. But if it's one game, we won the first game, so we would have moved on anyway.
So your answer is one for last year.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm very interested at the end to hear what this answer is.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Should be
Yeah.
a good one.
I wanted to real quickly bring up that Luca Orshano, there's been a rumor out there about the purchase option that's been completed. This rumor is coming out of Brazil from pretty highly, sources out of there in the soccer world, honestly. This guy actually comes out and says the transfer fee is going to be around $3 million and that we've completed this purchase option. Contract is for 2 years, option for a further extension of 1 year past that. So if true, I mean, just massive for the club and honestly a steal for 3 million. Shout out to Jermaine Garcia for putting this story out there and giving me some hope. But I think that would be a huge steal.
Yeah, definitely a steal for, the amount of value that he brought in. And, like we had talked, I think in the first, he wasn't named MLS Newcomer of the Year. He received 13% of the votes. So he's still making an impact for us, regardless of what the rest of the MLS says. And yeah, I mean, $3 million transfer fee for that
Steal,
quality. Come on. Yeah, we'll
steal.
take it. And even if nobody else is confirming it, right? We'll be on it. We'll be letting you know the updates. We'll be all over Twitter. Check our feed. But hopefully there's signs to come.
Which I mean, we've been calling for it for months. I don't see
Oh,
like
yeah.
obviously there's some reports, oh, we're going to evaluate it at the end of the season. It's like, you know what this guy has at this point. And
Just do it.
yeah, I don't know if it comes down to the financials probably,
Or
or
take away from the playoff hype or anything.
well, that and the options that you might bring in. You know, what
Yeah.
does that do to your flexibility with your roster? So at the end of the year, you see who you're left with, and then okay, that kind of determines, do you pay him as a DP? Do you not? You get more flexibility out of it that way. So that might be the reason why it's been kind of pushed that way. But all signs point towards Luca Orellano coming back to FC Cincinnati next year, which is the most important thing. We need a big performance for him in playoff game number 3, Sam. We play this coming Saturday, 4 p.m., TQL Stadium. Please, everyone listening, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. We need a packed house. Like, we need to have a fortress and just come out and dominate. We won 1-0 at home in March. We lost in Leagues Cup. Um, well, actually, we won. We won in Leagues Cup 4-2. We had a comeback in that one. Lost 3-2 at so it's been a very balanced series, but I feel good about the fact that like we're coming back home for it, and that the guys are hopefully a little upset about the way that it went, and maybe even the narrative of, hey, you win this game, you play at home again. So
Oh, yeah.
obviously you don't want to look forward, but you have to somewhat say like that's more incentive to let's win this game. We got to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And, like you just said, NYCFC have yet to beat FC Cincinnati at TQL Stadium. So, or at least this year.
Mhm.
So absolute must-win game, like you had said. And really happy that we actually get a home game on a Saturday, right? So we
For
should be able to
real.
pack the stadium. 4 p.m. kickoff should be fine, great. I believe the Bearcats should be at like 12, right? So you
Mhm.
could play a double if you want to play a double, go to the Bearcats game, then come to FC.
Might have been flexed to like 7 or 8. I might have seen that today, but still, it's later. It's still later. But
Either
yeah,
one.
I think for this game, you probably roll out the same lineup. I mean, you got to go with your guys, and I don't know if changing it at this point is the right way. Obviously, we've been wrong about a lot of the lineups, but I think he probably goes consistency if everyone's healthy in there. Like you go with the most confidence you have in that starting 11, and I think it speaks to the point of scoring first and quickly to kind of like build that confidence, and to take the narrative away of, for a team that you can possibly tie and go to PKs right away. That's an easier way to kind of advance on the road if you just you know pack it in like they kind of did in game 1. So if you put that out of hand early or force them to try to play, like that's huge. So I hope to see a push in the first 20 minutes of the game. We've had a lot of games earlier in the year where like first 4 or 5 minutes you come out and you score, you smack them in the mouth, and then you kind of just coast. But I don't want to get complacent. I want to just see a complete performance in this game. And to have like, hey, this is an absolute must win. Game 1, game 2, you don't really know, obviously. Well, game 2, obviously you have to win, but game 3, your back's against the wall. This is it. So it's game 7, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth. Freddie Freeman's up to bat, Sam.
Yeah, I hope we've got our Freddie Freeman and Lucho. He's been able to show that he can put it away when, the stars are bright. And I'm excited. I think I'm hoping like Lucho, like this is how we kick it off. Like this is how we create momentum into the rest of the playoffs. Lucho has a big game, maybe like a 2-goal game,
Yeah.
right? Or at least 2-goal comps. And we ride that into, playing Red Bulls. So I'm gonna go 2-0 FC Cincinnati.
Dang, you stole mine. I'll go 2-1 then. I was gonna go 2-0 as well, but 2-1 sounds right. Um, we got to get a win, I believe. So, give me your trivia question in closing here.
Yeah, so once again, kind of it's a little unusual that we're doing it in the same like half of the pod, but trivia question of the week was in last season's playoffs, how many game threes were played? And then of that number, how many games did the home team win? Well, Ryan, there were three.
Mm,
And you did get one portion right. All three home teams
okay.
won. The Crew over Atlanta, Sounders over Dallas, and then Houston over Salt Lake in PKs.
Wow.
But this year, matches that will be decided by the third game, there's actually four of them, and
Mm.
three of them are in the East. So LAFC Vancouver, Miami Atlanta, Orlando Charlotte, and FC versus NYC FC.
Game threes, man, they're big. Um,
Huge.
we need a big moment, and I hope this is not the end of our ride. I mean, I love this team and covering them this year, bringing this content to you guys every week. Like, it's been special, even with all the change and everything, the ups and downs. I don't want it to end. I'm not trying to get, sentimental on it, but I hope we can make a magical run. I see a path, to that final like we've seen all year. So hopefully next week we'll be bringing you a win and talking more about our next matchup. So thanks again for listening. Huge shout out to Carter Chapley. Awesome interview with him. We love Carter. Go check him out. And we will see you guys next week.